I had grit at a very young age. I learned that you can have just about anything you want out of life if you're willing to just help enough other people get what they want.
Scott Boatwright is a lifelong restaurant veteran, having started as a dishwasher when he was just a teenager. Scott excelled in every role that was given to him, and eventually he ended up in the Arby's system, where he quickly climbed the ladder until he was running operations at about 1,000 Arby's locations. In 2017, Chipotle founder Steve Ells called up Scott and asked him to come run operations for the fast casual chain. It was a critical point in Chipotle's history, as it was still rebounding and rebuilding trust after a food safety crisis. Scott became one of the architects behind Chipotle's remarkable comeback, transforming operations around digital tools while also standardizing the high quality expectations that Chipotle is known for. Now Scott is the CEO, and he's guiding Chipotle through another difficult season, this time Americans pulling back on spend after a period of rapid inflation. I sat down with Scott in this New York City restaurant to talk more about his career, how he's guiding Chipotle through this season, and on his signature leadership style. Now, I know that you've been in the restaurant industry basically your entire life.
Pretty much.
So let's go back to childhood. What was that like?
Yeah, so I grew up in an average, blue collar family. Had obviously mom, dad, and my brother. And, my dad taught me from a very early age some of the foundational building blocks of my character that I carry with me today. And that was grounded in this idea of hard work, perseverance, integrity, being a person of your word. I found my way into sports at a pretty young age, and through sports and athletics, you learn so many things around followership and leadership, and you don't know you're learning those things in the moment, but you find things that you can latch on to and aspire towards. I wasn't overly exuberant as an adolescent. And I often questioned my abilities, and I really had to prove to myself more than anyone else that I could do the things that I had set forth, or goals that I had set at a very young age. And so through high school, I had to work, right? And so if I wanted a car, I had to buy my own car and my own insurance and my own gas. And so I started washing dishes at a steakhouse, a local steakhouse. And so after school, I would go to football practice, and after football practice to the steakhouse, wash dishes until 11:30, 12 o'clock at night.
So at what point did you fall in love with restaurants? I mean, was it early that you recognized, I kind of want to do this for a while?
I think it was through some, recognition that I received, even in that role. I had managers who would spend time with me, talk about a career in the restaurant industry, but they saw potential in a young Scott Boatwright then, even when I didn't. And I really fell into this world of servant leadership, serving others, and it took me a little while to figure it out, but I learned that you can have just about anything you want out of life if you're willing to just help enough other people get what they want.
You end up in Arby's, and was that just another opportunity that came your way? How did you end up in that Arby's system?
Yeah, so I was working at a golf and tennis resort, a local golf and tennis resort to my home. And I think I was the assistant food and beverage director at this point, so leading a pretty large workforce across multiple channels of business through catering at a 80-seat dining facility, a snack bar on the golf course, beverage cart. So I was learning how to manage multiple functions through a pretty diverse workforce. And so I had a friend who called me and said a recruiter had reached out to him to join a company then called RTM. And he passed on the opportunity, but he shared with me the annual salary they were discussing on the phone. So I got the number to the recruiter, and I called the recruiter myself. 6 months later, I was working for RTM, which at the time was the largest franchisor or franchisee of any brand in the nation at that time. With 750 Arby's restaurants.
So Arby's, you were with Arby's until 2017. Thinking back about that season with Arby's, I mean, it was really transformational for that brand. Went through a couple ownership changes, had a sort of a renaissance with its marketing, a little bit, I don't want to call it a turnaround, but Arby's really had some really good years there. And I'm wondering what that was like for you as a leader in operations, being a part of that ride and what you learned in your time at Arby's.
Yeah, so this was coming out of the Great Recession. The brand was one of the most beleaguered brands in the industry at that time.
Yeah.
And it really couldn't find its footing. It wasn't quite QSR, but it wasn't quite fast casual, but it wanted to sit somewhere in the middle. And I think through the Great Recession, trying to compete on value as a price point, the brand lost its identity. We stopped competing on value as a price point. We stopped all the deals, the 4 for $5 or the whatever meal deal you could find.
Yeah.
Invested in the quality of the offering and started bringing in whole muscle meats, and then started competing on this idea that if protein is where you're gonna go, you're gonna come to Arby's. Because we have the meats. We have the meats. And then we rebranded the brand. We changed the uniforms, we changed the trade dress, we changed the menu board look and feel, and most importantly, we changed the marketing platform.
2017, you get a phone call from Steve Ells, and he's recruiting you to come over to Chipotle to run operations. What is your reaction at that point? What's your impression of Chipotle as a brand?
So when I get the call, it was to have a conversation about operations at Chipotle. And I've loved this brand for many, many years. And so oftentimes when I was out visiting restaurants, even for Arby's, if I passed by a Chipotle, I'd pop in and grab a burrito. I love the food, I love the authenticity, I love the people. I thought it was just this really cool brand that was differentiated, that it really created a pretty strategic moat around the business, around this idea of best ingredients in the world, prepared fresh in the restaurant every single day. And no one else was doing that, especially not at the price point. And so when Steve called, I was very intrigued.
2015, Chipotle had a pretty rough patch, let's say. Of course, food safety issues, lose trust with consumers, really target suddenly on the back of this company that had, until that point, been flying so high, kind of brought low by this experience. But I have to imagine you see so much opportunity there. What did you think was the potential for Chipotle when you came over? Absolutely
unlimited potential for the brand. I knew what the brand was challenged with in that moment wasn't necessarily what was happening in the business at that time. The broader issue was the fact that the brand had grown so quickly without the right leadership development capabilities to build ready now capable leaders to support that growth at that pace. That was the real challenge for the brand. And I knew building teams, putting in system standards and procedures, and really getting the fundamentals right in the business was squarely in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I knew if we got those things right, and we had the right leadership team in place, the right operational processes and systems, we could move the brand forward very quickly.
You were put in charge of basically saying, we're updating this thing to the modern age. Tell me about that process. How do you begin with thousands of restaurants, updating into this age where so many digital tools are available to you, you can transform the entire experience of a Chipotle with technology. Where do we even begin?
Well, I have to give a lot of credit to our Chief Technology Officer, Kurt Garner, who is arguably one of the best in the industry. He helped build the tech stack and digital system at Starbucks, and then obviously helped us get it off the ground here at Chipotle. What I did was identify the need for innovation. And so a couple of examples of that, when I started, we were off fax machines, and then we went to paper chits coming out of a receipt printer, and then watching team members trying to sequence orders on a rail was mind-numbing to me. And managers, as you can imagine, were reluctant to staff and stock our second make line because the business just wasn't there. They were throwing away more food than they were actually serving in those early days. But if you don't make that investment, you never grow that business. And I'm sure you've heard that in the restaurant space, if you always run it like it's low volume, it'll remain low volume.
Late 2024, Brian Niccol leaves for Starbucks. You're named interim CEO. Take me to that moment. What's going through your head because I know that was a bit of a surprise to everybody involved. What were you thinking in that moment, becoming interim CEO?
Yeah, I guess my initial thought was, I've got to keep the team intact. It is a very I think it's probably a who's who of restaurant leaders across our leadership team, between Kurt, Chris, Eileen, Lori, Roger. It is a pretty impressive team of individuals that have done really good work for Chipotle over the last 8-9 years. And so my first response was, all right, so we've got to corral the team, we've got to settle the troops down, make sure people aren't unsure about what's next and what's to come, make sure we're aligned on our priorities, and those strategic priorities don't shift, and then keeping the team in place so we can continue to grow this brand meaningfully over the next many years.
What were your first steps after you were named permanent CEO?
Yeah, so I took a hard look at, so I'm the fourth CEO in the brand's history. And I think about the phases for each one of those CEOs, where the brand was then, what got accomplished under that CEO's leadership, and then what will be different and unique about my approach to the business and my time at Chipotle. And so I think about what a modern company CEO should do today. Number one is run a great business. And that gives you the opportunity to do the other two. Number two, I talk about this idea of managing a great stock. It's what a CEO does. I don't mean managing the stock price. What I mean by that is ensure we're telling the story, we're sharing the vision, we're sharing the direction of the organization so that investors or external stakeholders are brought along the journey. And then number three is organizational legacy. And not legacy for the CEO, but what will the legacy be for this organization under your tenure, and how will you set it up for what will be the next phase of growth for the organization?
If you look back at where you were when you were 15 and learning everything you've learned along the way, what's your advice to other young leaders in the restaurant industry or not even in the restaurant industry about what they should keep in mind as they're on their own growth journeys?
Be a great learner, be intellectually curious, ask lots of questions, surround yourself with people that you can aspire towards, right? People that will motivate you and push you. I would tell you to get uncomfortable. I think the biggest growth moments that happened in our career, at least in my career, is when I was really uncomfortable. And those moments really begin to shape and mold the leader that you are or will become. I think that's incredibly important. Never lose sight of your values. Keep them directly in front of you and never sacrifice on those values.
Yeah.
Get aligned with an organization that you believe in, a product you believe in, a purpose that you believe in, and you'll be very successful.